millions of people recite the words "conceived by the Holy Spirit, born of the Virgin Mary" every Sunday. We see the imagery on Christmas cards and hear it in carols. The virgin birth sits comfortably in the background of the nativity story. But when we stop to think about it, the story usually triggers one of two reactions. Skeptics often dismiss it as a borrowed pagan legend, meant to make a Jewish peasant sound impressive. Many believers affirm it as a historical event, but leave it unexamined, viewing it as a standalone miracle of divine power. Both of those views miss the question we actually need to be asking: why a virgin birth in the first place? What specific theological work was this extraordinary event supposed to accomplish? The earliest writers of the Christian tradition did not view this as biological squeamishness regarding sex. They understood the virgin conception as a deliberate sign act, a physical event intentionally designed to communicate a shift in the human condition. Treating the conception as a piece of grafted mythology or a dispensable magical detail misses the internal logic of the incarnation. To understand the early claim, we have to look closely at what this moment was designed to change. A common critical theory argues that the early church simply lifted the virgin birth concept from Greco-Roman pagan mythology. The idea is that they wanted their founder to compete with heroes whose fathers were gods, but the structures of those stories do not match. Pagan origin myths almost universally involve physical, sexual unions between divine males, like Zeus or Apollo, and human women. The Gospel accounts, specifically Luke's, lack that entirely. There is no erotic register. The language describes a purely creative act by the Holy Spirit. On top of that, the earliest Christians were Palestinian Jews. They would have found stories of gods impregnating mortals repulsive. The narrative they wrote, featuring an obscure peasant girl giving birth in a feeding trough, was poorly suited to Greco-Roman tastes. The textual evidence points away from borrowed myth and toward an underlying historical claim. We can see this by tracking two independent streams of historical attestation in the New Testament: the Gospel of Matthew and the Gospel of Luke. Matthew focuses on Joseph's perspective and traces a legal genealogy, while Luke focuses on Mary's different lineage entirely. They highlight different details, yet converge on specific core facts: a virgin conception by the Holy Spirit in Bethlehem to Mary and Joseph. When you combine this departure from pagan tropes with two independent historical records, the evidence points to an ancient community wrestling with an unprecedented historical reality. That reality draws from an ancient prophetic expectation found in the book of Isaiah, which declared that the Lord would give a sign: a virgin would conceive and bear a son. Long before the birth of Jesus, Jewish scholars translating the Hebrew Bible into Greek chose the specific word parthenos, meaning virgin, for this passage. The ancient translators expected an extraordinary, non-routine birth as a divine sign. But that sign addresses a deeper problem. In the biblical framework, the first Adam stands at the top of the human family tree. His rebellion brought a fallen human nature into the world, passed down through standard biological descent. This is federal headship. If Jesus was conceived through an ordinary biological union, he would inherit that fallen condition, participating in the old succession. The virgin conception answers this problem. By taking biological form from Mary alone, Jesus preserves true human nature. But because the conception is a direct act of the Holy Spirit, it breaks the line of inherited Adamic guilt. Jesus enters history outside the inherited line of the first Adam. He stands as the head of a new humanity, untethered from the rebellion that defines the old family tree. This explains the specific vocabulary Luke uses. He writes that the Holy Spirit will overshadow Mary. That specific verb was used in ancient Greek translations to describe the cloud of God's glory descending and filling the tabernacle. The text also draws a line to the very beginning of the Bible. The exact same Spirit that hovered over the waters of the original creation in Genesis is now presented as hovering over Mary. In this framework, Mary functions as the new Eve. Where the first Eve grasped at what was not given to her in the garden, Mary willingly receives what is given, telling the angel, "Let it be to me according to your word." This affirms the absolute physical reality of the incarnation. To save humanity, God did not bypass human biology. He entered directly into it, engaging with actual flesh and real biological development. The virgin birth is a quiet moment in a backwater province, yet it represents the point of total discontinuity. In this womb, the God of creation began remaking the world from within a single cell, inaugurating a new human lineage.